is on hybrid model, so that some of the outstanding speakers, we can get them without wasting too much of the time traveling all the way to Chennai. Before I call upon the speaker to discuss on the theme of the discussion this evening, let me briefly tell you quickly what's happening in MMA next few days, so that you don't miss them. Next event is happening on export-import policies and procedures for MSME. It's a seminar we are doing with Government of India MSME sector. It's happening from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on 24th at MMA, and you can log in directly and register with them. Again, this already we have registration closed, full house. Then on Saturday, 25th, we have our MMA flagship event annual convention. It's happening at IIT Research Park Auditorium on the theme how to drive sustainable inclusive growth. We have got some outstanding galaxy of speakers. This is again registration closed. It's full house. We have got over 900 registrations already live at IIT Research Park. But large number of people are watching. This event is webcast live on YouTube, live on Facebook, live on Twitter, live on radio. So you can watch them live. We have some outstanding speakers I mentioned, including CEO of Niti Aayog and some of them who is in the field of managing directors, top corporate leaders are addressing. The inaugural session will be addressed by Honorable Member of Parliament Prem Chandran. I think we'll walk miles to listen to him, one of the great thought leaders, 5-time Member of Parliament from Kollam, Kerala, and also heads number of committees in Parliament. Then you log on to our website to know the big list of speakers, around 20 speakers. You can log on to my website and have a look at it. Then on 14th of March, as usual, we have this. On the 3rd of March, we have one international tax conference. We call it International Tax on Contemporary Trends in International Taxation. We are doing this with IFA, IFAC, and the International Fiscal Association at MMA Auditorium. And the recent amendments which have come in the Income Tax Act, especially transfer pricing and a couple of other issues, there are a lot of tax implications. We thought, let's have a one-day seminar on the contemporary tax implications on various issues, which will really clarify a number of issues from the experts, and it will be easy for the corporate not to violate the law, even unwittingly, because you violate the law, even unknowingly, you get into serious trouble. So if you are a corporate, you are a multinational, this is an event which you attend MMA, and you'll get the circular very soon. We just finalized all the speakers. On 14th of March, we have time management in Tirukkural. Dr. Rajaram IAS will be talking to us. And again, on 14th of March, we have 22nd competition for young outstanding women managers. This women managers competition is open to all women under the age of 58. It's attractive prizes. It's organized as a prelude to the MMA Women Managers Convention. Do join us and win attractive prizes. Then on 18th of March, we have MMA Women Managers Convention on the theme the Extra Mile. We have again outstanding speakers. Some of them confirmation awaited that include some of the popular actors in Nayanthara and also Varalakshmi Sarath Kumar and a couple of other people will be talking to us. What are the extra mile they're taken to achieve some of the outstanding achievements? And we got some really, really brilliant sessions on this, and maybe 1 or 2 sessions I can share with them, which not to be missed. There's a session on shifting priorities and one exclusive session on fun skills for a wholesome life. That means where we'll be teaching, we'll be telling people how to take photography in the social media, how to present yourself in Instagram. And we're also going to talk about health and beauty, how to keep yourself physically fit and how to maintain your health. And also Amrita Samant, who is a Sony photographer, artisan, and she's ambassador of NCPAI. She'll be talking to us on photography and social media. Prakriti Anant, she'll be talking to us on Prakriti Studio, health and beauty. And we're also going to talk about nutrition, and Meenakshi, nutrition well-being consultant. They're all international firm speakers. You must come and listen. All other details we'll be sharing with you. Then this is happening on 18th. The date of March, we have India's Pathway for Success, winning in the next decade. Ganesh Nadarajan, founder, Denser. We got again outstanding manager, including our Dr. Mashelkar. Mashelkar is an innovation guru and was the advisor to Prime Minister earlier on innovation. One of the brilliant thoughts on innovation come from this team. 23rd March, we are managing social organizations. That's from world's largest pilgrimage center. Because social organizations require an effective management. We are bringing in a live case study of how TTD, Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam, is managing the finances and how they are managing that entire thing. There is a theory book written by two IIM professors, Ravichandran and Venkatraman from IIM Lucknow. We have got an outstanding panel again. We have Dr. Subbarao, who is a former executive director of TTD, and he knows on personally how the TTD is run. And Balaji Raja Boshle is a hereditary trustee. Tanjavur Palace is a king of Tanjavur king. He will be talking to us. We also invited Gopal Swami, IAS, former Chief Election Commissioner. So this is what is happening. Then on the 24th of March, we have Lead and Grow. So we have some outstanding programs already lined up for you. Now coming to today's event. This is a part of the Women's Business Forum, and thanks to Maithili for steering this so effectively, bringing month after month some outstanding speakers. Today's topic is the fireside chat discussion on the theme, Women on Boards, how to increase their presence. Because you all know, we all talk all the time. I keep hearing 50% of the population is women. Why so much of, I won't say discrimination, why they are not well represented, not only in board, but also in all activities, in terms of job, in terms of skilling, why they are not given equal opportunity, and why they should be denied some of the best boardroom or corner room. But why to go to that level? Even some basic livelihood people get affected because they're not recognized. And there are so many issues which involving women. I know Maithili and Aarthi will be discussing this, and this is going to be a very fascinating talk this evening. Let me, the format of the event is as usual. I'll introduce the distinguished speaker and Maithili. Maithili, I'll introduce the speaker also.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, I will do that. And thereafter, Maithili, after setting the context, Aarthi will speak and we'll take questions.
It will be a question and answer.
Yes. If you have any questions, please share it in your chat box. Otherwise, there's the numbers flashed on your screen. You can send it to them and we'll pick up and place all the questions before. Please have your questions related to women issues, anything under the thing, but all relevant to the subject what you're going to be discussing. Let me have the privilege of introducing the distinguished speaker for this evening. And Madam, I think I can tell you this is the time where when we started, it's full out. Our Zoom capacity is only kept only 100, but there will be thousands of people watching on our other social media platforms. Aarthi Madhusudhan is the founder, Governance Counts, and we can only change the world if all of us get involved. Our mission in life is to try and get as many people involved in making a difference by volunteering their skills and their time to NGO social cause in India. She does this by consulting with individual NGOs around the board strategies and helping them to articulate the role of the boards and identifying potential board members and advisors. More recently, I've started exploring pro bono mentor panels who are people with functional expertise and will support the senior team members in an NGO to do their job more effectively. To enable this sector to create a pool of potential board members and advisors who would have gained the experience of the organization, more group could follow. She equally passionate about volunteering and believe in what must be think about volunteering as a journey for individuals, from providing opportunity to expose the first-time volunteer to enabling them move up in engaging usefully and eventually become evangelists in volunteering. Phenomenal, madam. I strongly believe volunteering is to give people learn a lot by being a volunteer. And MMA is one such organization. We have a lot of volunteers. One such example is Maithili, who's so passionate in driving this thing, because all of our company members are volunteers and we have 8,000 members. Very warm welcome to you. We are all eagerly looking forward to listening to you. And Maithili, all the members know about Maithili. Let me briefly introduce Maithili. Is the consumer behavior brand strategic enthusiast, and he's got about 35 years of experience and show the brand strategy. Recently, she also retired from J. Walter Thompson, one of the most popular companies in the branding, and freelance strategy consultant. And she's the one who drives this Women Business Forum. She'll say a few words about our Women Business Forum, because we do a lot of activities, and still Maithili will agree with me. We wanted women to come forward and start utilizing all the facilities what we are offering. It's not happening, but I'm quite sure we are not going to give up. We are very, very persistent with what we want to do. And I think we will achieve our objective one day. Over to you, Maithili.
Thank you. Thank you, Group Captain. So welcome to another evening of motivation and inspiration at the Women's Business Forum of the Madras Management Association. As you all know, every time we choose our speakers for a variety of different reasons. And really the choice, there are many reasons for choosing Aarthi, and I think it will unfold in the next hour. Let me pull out one comment from Group Captain's introduction. He talked about why is the world denying women opportunities? And I think one of the things many speakers have said is that, is the world denying, or are women denying it for themselves? You know? So I mean, I think Aarthi will talk more about that. thing that fascinated me about Aarthi was her daring vision in one of her activities, which was this iVolunteer, which is a vision that every Indian should volunteer. Yeah, I thought that was a fantastic vision and a daring thing to start, because it seems like something that is so far away. But that whole philosophy of, one small step and every drop in the ocean. So Aarthi, let's start by, tell us briefly about all the many things that you do, and tell us also how you got into this whole area.
Thank you, Maithili, and thank you, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, for the very warm introduction. Maithili, you said tell us briefly, and that puts enormous pressure on me because you know that once I start talking, I won't, but I will try to be brief. I'll start by saying that I think I was very fortunate to have, the privilege of knowing for myself as to what I wanted to do pretty early on in life. And that came from both the context that I was brought up in, the upbringing that I had, and many of us, are privileged in that way, but to be able to reflect on it very mindfully and then realize that, okay, this is what brings me great joy, was something that I discovered pretty early on, which is why I got into the social sector, studied in institutions that offered an exposure to the social sector, and so on. And why I do what I do, and as we speak, I will share more. But really, very simply, it's just the joy that it brings to me and makes me feel good about waking up every day and looking into the mirror.
Yeah. This audience is often very interested in how did you start? What was the first job or the first activity or the first effort when you entered this area? How did it start?
So I can go back very, very long, I think it honestly started with the schools that I went to. And I think it was good luck that, they nurtured and encouraged, and sometimes I think not very gently persuaded all of us who were studying at that time to participate in activities that really focused on the underserved. So whether it was, writing letters for the elderly back in the day, we would just
Where was this? Where was this?
Yeah, so the very first instance I think was in Rourkela, which is where I grew up.
Okay.
And I remember that we were all put into a bus and taken to an old age home. And I must have been in 3rd grade or 5th grade or something. I don't even remember how young I was at the time, but I was very young. I know that. And the opportunity was presented as, you will meet elderly people, you'll need to write letters for them, and this will improve your handwriting. Okay. Because the schools I went to, and back in the day, everybody needed to have very good cursive handwriting, right? I don't know what the average age of the participants here is, but I know, Maithili, you will remember this, from your school days, that handwriting was considered quite important. And it is interesting because many years later, when I reflected, I realized how that opportunity was presented to me and my parents, right? It wasn't about going there and doing something for somebody else. It was an opportunity for yourself, right? That if you do this, your handwriting will improve, as well as you will be able to do something for somebody else. So really, I think that is how it started. And the institutions I went to, school, college, both had enormous, I would say, thinking around doing things for the underserved around us, and just being very aware of, our own privilege. But I think a lot of schools do that, a lot of educational institutions do that. But I just became very aware of it when I was very young. And so in 9th grade, fast forward, I grew up with my grandparents from then on. And, the lady who used to help us at home, her son was probably in 10th or 11th grade, and he needed support in a few subjects. And, my grandfather said to me that, okay, you have time, and why don't you start coaching? So every Saturday or Sunday, Velu would come home. This is again in Chennai. When I had moved to Chennai by then, he would come home and, we would actually study together. And that's again something that I reflected on later. It was less about, okay, I knew how to speak, read and write English and Velu did not, and here is something I was doing for him. But the way that it was presented to me was to say, sit with Velu and do your studies at the same time. So you will also finish what you need to finish. And in the process, help him with what he is doing. And so there are there are millions of such instances that I can talk about from childhood. But yeah, I think these seeds get sown very young.
Yeah. No, that's great, because many of our speakers have stressed on the fact that think about why are you doing what you are doing?
Correct.
Yeah. And I think this is a very refreshing perspective that when we think we are in social, we are doing for others, but it is good that it is actually your growth and you're nurturing your character when you do that.
Absolutely.
So tell us, coming to women and careers and their work lives, in all your exposure and in your view and experience, what are the 3 or 4 big themes that you feel need to drive women as they think through, their motivations, desires, ambitions? Like you said, you were very self-aware. What are the 3 or 4 kind of lampposts, this thing that you would say that the guiding philosophies, especially we have a lot of students in our audience, as they set out, what do you think they should be looking for?
Yeah, thanks, Maithili. I think, apart from self-awareness, and I think all of us are self-aware, we just need to sit with that awareness, right? It's impossible for you to be doing something without awareness. My view is you're aware, but I think in the run of life, you don't sit with that awareness and reflect enough. So that certainly is one. So reflection, I think, is a very key and important element in getting started, right? What did this make me feel and why did I feel the way that I did? It doesn't have to be something very big. It's just as simple as that. The second, I think for me, what worked, and this might vary in degrees with different people, was just courage. And I remember when I was, my daughter was very young, and I really wanted to be the parent that was around both my daughter and son when they were growing up. This was in Bangalore when we were living there. And I remember picking up my 2-year-old daughter and walking into this organization that had a board outside which said Mahila Samakya Karnataka, right? And I walked in, and Revati, my mentor, who I've had the highest regard and respect for, was the director then of the organization. And I went to her and I said, I'm just bored just looking after my 2-year-old. It took me a lot of courage to say that, because that wasn't the most appropriate thing to say. And probably in many families it still isn't. And I said, I'm very bored just, changing nappies and baby talk all through the day. Can I do anything at all over here? I'm happy to come and just stuff envelopes. It doesn't matter. And I said, I'll be able to do it between 9 and 12 because my daughter had started going to play school. She was an early, she started early. And she'll be away for 2 hours, 2.5 hours in the morning. And I can come at that time, and, I'll drop her at play school and I'll come. And Revati said something to me, which really was the beginning of catapulting me almost, I would say. She said, why, we are a women's organization. Why would you just want to come for 2.5 hours? Bring Nidhi and come in the afternoon. So for the next 2 years, I would go in the morning, come back in the afternoon with Nidhi, go to the office. And she had a wonderful upbringing because there were many people who then, looked after her. So courage, I think what's the worst that can happen? Somebody will say no.
Yeah.
Right. Nothing else can happen to you. Right? Nobody's going to beat you or hit you or maybe they'll say a few nasty words, but then that's on them. Right. So I think the second is courage. The third is owning your success, right? Whatever you define it as. And I think for me, it was always about the validation that I gave myself and being very proud, not arrogant, but really being proud of what I had done, however small it was, every day. And I think as women, I dare say, this is a generalization, we do not own our successes enough. right? We need to be out there, and we need to be very proud of what we are doing as individuals, as a community, and say it out loud. I've done this, and I'm proud. I deserve what I'm getting. I often find it very amusing, and I'm always raising my hand and stopping women who are saying, "Oh, I've done all this, but I had all of these things going on for me." I'm not saying one needs to be ungrateful, but we have to be out there owning our successes more vocally.
So let's come to the social sector in particular, where you have. So first, give us a little deeper view of all the things that you're actually doing in this sector, and then I'll come to a question which is more women focused. So tell us about governance and all of that.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, because I knew what I wanted to do, and of course, I worked for it. The universe conspired, and I was able to study where I did. So I went to Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and then I studied at NIMHANS in Bangalore because I was interested in mental health, and I continue to be. But it was a much deeper interest back then. And then, of course, I mentioned Mahila Samakya and so on. But I very soon began to, look around the organizations that I was working in, volunteering in, and involved in. And I found that there was a gap in terms of how much more effective or efficient they could actually have become. And I think this is true of all entrepreneurs and founders, right? I mean, it's your baby, you want to nurture it. You are probably the best parent for it, but you may not be the only parent that may be able to do everything. I mean, it's as simple as you send your child to school. If you are able to do everything, then you teach your child at home, but there are things that the schools can do. So as I began to look around and continued working in the sector, I began to identify this as an area that probably needed more attention. And this is the other thing I say, right? I mean, if you put out an intention out there, and this is not, it may seem like, okay, Aarti's in La La Land and doing some mumbo jumbo thing, but if you put out an intention strongly enough, the universe will conspire to make it happen. I'm a very strong believer of that. So that is exactly what happened. And I didn't know at that point, what is it that one could do to address this gap in governance, in leadership that I was observing. I was young, I was 27, 28 years old back then. Then a man named Murray Culshaw, came into my life again in Bangalore, used to run an organization called Bangalore Cares, and then, later on became India Cares. And I happened to meet him quite accidentally, actually. I'd gone to deliver something, and he was there, and and he said, "What are you interested in?" And I said, "This is what." And between him and another man called Mark Seidel, they made it possible for me to go to Board Source, which is in the US, used to be called the National Center for Nonprofit Boards, to just get a little bit more educated about what is the role that the board, which is the owner in some sense of the organization, what is it that they can do to enable the organization to be more effective. So that's where my journey in governance actually began. Because I, spoke to friends who were running organizations, who were working, and I found that there was a huge appetite, to understand this better. And, I'd gone to the US, equipped myself with some exposure. Long story short, lived and worked, in the UK, and then, moved back to India about a little over a decade ago, and have continued to work in the governance space. But very closely aligned to that, again, I began to find people saying, I have time, or I'm interested, or this problem keeps me awake. I'm concerned about this. What can I, very few people, say, what can I do? It stops with saying, I'm really bothered about the environment, or I'm really bothered about, whatever it is, right? Corruption or anything, right? But also began to find that when you probe a little bit, people do want to actually be a part of the solution. It's no fun being part of the problem, right? None of us enjoys that. It's a lot of fun being part of the solution, right? And the desire is there. And again, that's when, people who run iVolunteer, Shalab and Rahul, wonderful people, they set up iVolunteer as an opportunity for individuals to volunteer time. I joined them about 8 or 9 years ago. And so volunteering and just trying to encourage more people to volunteer is the other big piece that, I'm deeply interested and involved in. And apart from them, you can't preach if you don't practice. So I do volunteer as much as I can myself, because one needs to be grounded all the time. The context around us is changing. You are changing the way that you think about things. So it's very important to see where is that connect, that sweet spot within how you're evolving and changing, and how your own understanding is evolving and changing, and what's happening on the ground as well. So yeah, so these two things. And of course, I have two lovely kids, so I enjoy harassing them as much as they will allow me to.
Yeah. So give the audience an idea of where have these initiatives reached. I mean, I know so how many such organizations have you been involved in? How many volunteers? What is the mass that has been created so far? Yeah. What is the size looking like?
Yeah. So again, I think one of the things, the points I want to make, just as a segue to what you're saying, Maithili, is one thing I realized about myself, and this is really important for all of us in this audience, is to sit with what kind of a person am I, right? And for me, I realized that I'm not somebody that can either boss people or have a boss. Right? Because one, I cannot do just the one thing all the time. I need to be doing multiple things. If you're working in an organization or run one yourself, focus is very, very critical.
Yeah.
Right? So in my head, all of the things that I do are connected. But in reality, they might seem like very disparate things, right? So knowing that about myself was useful, because I said, I'm not going to set up as an organization. I'm going to work as an independent consultant, because freedom to me is more important than anything else. I want to be able to walk away from an engagement like that. So I've always worked as an independent consultant. I think the last I counted, I've worked with more than 150, 200 organizations, helping them and that sounds like a very big number, but I must quickly clarify that it's at varying levels that I have, or depth that I've engaged with these organizations, helping them think about, governance and boards. On the volunteering side, I have not counted, Maithili. I'm not a numbers person at all. I'm hoping, so I will talk to anybody who's willing to talk to me, right? I mean, if I'm sitting in a bus, then I will ask the person if they'll volunteer.
Give us an idea of where has India reached, like some of the larger organizations that you have worked with. Is the whole belief of volunteering gaining momentum? What are the age groups of people who are getting involved?
So it's an interesting question, because I think that, as you speak, we are actually looking at gathering this data to understand where is formal, and I must distinguish between formal volunteering and what I call non-formal volunteering. It's also very cultural, right?
Yeah.
So if you'll find, for example, in a busy road in Chennai, the auto guy will step out and is helping the policeman patrol traffic. That is volunteering, for example. It's not, I'm not counting, I mean, none of us is counting that as a number. I think the appetite for volunteering, if you look at just the nonprofit sector, needs to be nurtured. I will be honest to say that there's a bit of cynicism saying, I don't know if these people are, I don't know if people are going to turn up and help me or not. Right. So we need to do a lot more work there. The nonprofit sector is very huge, right? And it's very diverse. So there are all kinds of organizations. And the truth is, and my hypothesis is every one of those organizations can do with help. So I would say that the appetite needs to be built and nurtured far more in terms of formal volunteering. In terms of people actually volunteering, I think a lot of that is happening. A lot of what is happening we don't know about, right? And that's cultural as well. I do believe, though, and I don't mean to, sort of be a dismal tone in this. I do believe that the privileged community, the middle and the upper middle income community, there is scope for us to do a lot more. than what we currently are doing, and sharing. And this is not to say that, oh, but people are volunteering and we don't know about it. I think that I find there is a scope for a lot of improvement in terms of putting yourself out there and saying, raising your hand and saying, hey, what can I do?
Okay, so now let's move from volunteering to careers in the social sector. Yeah, because it's called not-for-profit. So
Yes.
a lot of people don't know that there are earning jobs.
Yes.
In the sector, and the sector is growing and it's becoming there are degrees and certifications
Correct.
available, and young people are opting for this as a career. So can you talk
Yes.
to us about careers in the social sector?
Yes, I can. I certainly can. So, the typical approach is to say, can I get a master's in social work or developmental studies? There's a whole sort of range of those kinds of courses that are available, which will enable individuals to look at being involved professionally in the development sector or the social sector. But there's also a lot of room for economists and mathematicians and researchers and all of these skills in the nonprofit sector. So there is what I would think technical skills, which is, one needs to understand, let's say, disability very well, or one needs to understand geriatric care very well to be able to do a certain kind of a job in that particular kind of an organization. I would, at the cost of sounding, sort of generalizing, I would say many skills that the social sector needs can be learned over a period of time if the intent is intact, right? So you will hear of organizations that are doing extremely well and scaling and doing wonderful work, be it in education or health, who may not have a degree in education or who may not have a degree in health-related studies, but they've equipped themselves through work and through, through research and reading and interacting to be able to do that and find the right kind of people who can. So I think there is a burgeoning of opportunities in the nonprofit sector in terms of careers. I do want to add that the return from those careers is not very likely, except in the case of a small percentage of organizations, not very likely to be materialistically very high. So if you think, oh, I'm going to become a crorepati at the end of working in the social sector, it's very unlikely that that will happen. It is also not governed by very traditional hierarchical growth trajectory. So, you won't start as a fresher and then be vice president something. I mean, there is no vice president anything in the majority of organizations. But one thing I can tell you is that if there is desire, belief, intent to equip yourself with skills, or you have those skills and you get into the sector, it's extremely hard to leave. I have found, and very, very few people who walk away from it. There is always that tipping point. You need to spend enough time. There are people who walk in and out, but for the majority of us who stay on, it's just extremely fulfilling and very joyous. You can't put a price on that.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I have heard the younger people who are engaging and are choosing into this sector are motivated, have a completely different kind of motivation, and the sense of purposefulness that they find in their jobs is very much different from what the rest of us had. Talk to us a little bit about how mid-career and towards the people in their 40s and 50s now opting to shift and making lateral shifts, because the sector does require, as you said, it requires scientists and technologists and finance people and marketing people. So how is that shift coming along? Do people make the shift? Do they struggle? What is the struggle?
So one of the things that I've learned, and both through observing individuals who want to work in the sector as well as those who want to volunteer in the sector, that the copy-paste approach will not work. I mean, if you're a wonderful, a finance person or a tech person or a marketing person, the approach that you might have had to work, to solutioning is not going to work in exactly the same way in the social sector. The skills are, can be used and will be helpful, but the attitude is very, very important. So especially for people who are making this mid 40, 50 mid-career shifts, I think for them to be able to internalize that, the resources that enabled them in their jobs are not going to be there, right? So, I've had instances where, let's say the marketing head will come up and say, hey, you know what, I think if you want to bring greater visibility to this issue, let's put up hoardings all over, right? And that might be very much more easily possible in the for-profit scenario, because there's a budget for it, it's been thought through, there's somebody who's willing to invest in that, not really worry about, did these hoardings increase sales or not, that kind of thing. In the non-profit sector, that's going to be very, very hard to come by. So I think copy pasting will not work. The sector is hugely driven and often visibly so by people who are at the steering wheel, right? So people who are driving the organization, whether it's the founder, it's the board, it's the CEO. So really understanding them. And I always say the easiest way to make the shift is start by helping in the manner sought, right? I've often had colleagues who will say to me that, Aarthi, please don't introduce us to somebody who will give us 20 more things to do, right? And all of those things may be relevant and useful, not at all denying that. But it's very important to say, okay, what do you need help? What is keeping you awake and what do you need help with? And can I start there, right? And it may be something that you may have done 20 years ago in your career as a technically competent person, but often, people just want help there, right? And people want, in the sector, people want you to take away some of the work that they are burdened with. So not to say, okay, I have this wonderful idea, now give me like 5 more people who can go and execute it and I will manage them. The sector doesn't want more managers at all, right? They do want good advice, but they want that advice to be backed with commitment and time, okay? And the willingness to use one's own networks, right? We all know 30 people. I didn't know you at all. I mean, we connected on LinkedIn and you responded, right? And that's exactly what I'm saying. So, I mean, I just reached out, like I said, what can Maitli will say? No, she won't connect. That's all, right? Nothing else is going to happen. But you did. Lots of people do. So I think coming in to use connections, coming in to learn, coming into with the view that this is going to help me, whether it's finding purpose, whether it's just feeling, good about doing something very different. I'll give you a very small story. I had a chartered accountant who, reached out to me a few weeks ago, and the immediate thought in my head was, okay, now let's look for some organization that needs help in finance, right? And I sent him a bunch of things, and then he said, you know what, Aarthi, I've been doing finance for 40 years of my life. Okay. I play the violin. Find me an organization where I can teach violin to children. Okay. So just almost flushing out the biases that we might both consciously and subconsciously have. And coming to say, okay, what can I do to help? And will that make me joyful, right? Otherwise, I mean, you're not an unpaid or a paid consultant. That's not who sectors are. That's not who the sector is looking for. Long answer, sorry.
No. Thank you for that. Now, tell us a little bit about, so is there any difference in the way women approach and work in this? Are there any different sets of skills or sensibilities, or is it all the same? What are the advantages they bring to the sector, and is there anything they struggle with that men don't? Because I do know that this requires a lot of ground level work, it requires travel, it requires a different kind of grit. It requires a different kind of stamina.
So I'm constantly changing my answer to this question. must be honest,
Okay.
because I'm finding that, as I'm also growing older and evolving, and, we do this Women on Boards program, and hopefully we'll talk about it a little bit. I think that it's hard to generalize and say that this is what women bring, but I can definitely say this is what women are able to bring, right? Because obviously, I haven't done enough. There's a lot of research which says that, okay, women bring the compassion quotient, and they will look at, problems which hopefully will have larger social good implications, right? Whether it is in the social sector or not, right? I don't know if we have enough data in the country to back that. But also is I'm myself evolving my understanding. I'm saying, why should that burden be on another burden be on women to do that, right? Everybody needs to be compassionate. Everybody needs to be looking at the larger social good. What is this thing of, okay, so women, so let her also bring the compassion quotient. Well, I will, thump my chest and thump my fists on the table, right? But I think women are able to, certainly from anecdotal observation only, are able to negotiate the conversations a lot better, right? I think they're able to be a little bit more empathetic, because I think, life just enables them to be that, right? This is a very, very broad brush generalization, but I would say that, it is certainly there. I also sometimes think that some women tend to be a little bit hesitant about putting their point forward emphatically, right? They have a lot to say, but they sometimes are hesitant, and that is never a good thing. In terms of technical competence, I think it doesn't matter. The gender doesn't matter, right? It's what you are because of what you're able to do. So there, I think gender is a little less relevant. In a mixed group, the good news is I think that women are being listened to a little bit more than they might have been in the past, right? And it's probably a combination of a lot of them being able to be a little bit more open and vocal, as well as the context around us slowly, very, very slowly, but surely becoming more aware of this, right?
The reason I asked this question is because, of course, I have very limited exposure to this sector, but I've heard two things. So one is, for example, this sector is a lot in the business of transformation, right?
Correct.
So you go into, let's say, a community, and it's transformation of communities.
Yes.
So you say, let's say you go into a small town or a village thinking that you're going to do an education initiative, but you end up realizing that it is education and livelihood and sanitation and electricity and so many things. And so two things. One, I've heard that in an environment like that, when you have to convince the teacher and you have to change the parents' mind, and because there are different people involved and there is influencing and making them understand and getting complex relationships to come together and work. Maybe women have a better skill there. That is one thing I've heard. Though I'm sure everybody is equally. The other I've heard is the sector is full of entrepreneurs, right? And so at the entrepreneurial stage, we keep hearing that, men are better equipped to think through the finance, bolder in going and asking for their money and managing that. So these are two things that I've heard. I could be wrong. So what are your perspectives on that? And are there any other areas? I'm not asking this to pull apart the differences, but just to see that if you're interested in this, what are the things women need to build on, and what are the things where are the strengths that they can use?
Thanks, Maithili. So I think I want to, answer the first question first. And I'm just, again, I want to caveat this by saying that I don't run an organization. I don't really work in transforming communities myself, but this is just from observation and some little, in my volunteering, some of the little work that I have done in communities, right? I think what's missing, and this is a personal view, it's not to talk about the sector. I think my personal view is that we need to be asking the community a little bit more in terms of what is the change that they want for themselves. many organizations do a very, very good job of this, right? So you'll find that in their decision-making, communities are involved, for example. But I think we need to do a lot more around this, right? It doesn't matter what the community is, whether it is children in a school, whether it's teachers, and others. So my mantra is help in the way that is being sought, right? Everywhere across the board. So I think that one of the things I'm observing is that awareness is becoming sharper now. I also think that, personally, I have been responsible myself for assuming what problems people out there have and what solutions they will require, and therefore just going to them with that without enough understanding. So and also that there's complete lack of equity in that, by the way, right? So the very problem that you're trying to solve, you don't, because you're
maybe the wrong problem.
Yeah, it's a wrong problem, and you're taking away the right of the individual to be part of the solution themselves, and whoever it is, whether it's a community or an individual. So I think being aware of that becomes very, very critical. That is this what you want? I mean, do you want your child to study better? If you do, then these are opportunities, and this is what I'm working on. So, engage with me or not, and that's your choice. The question between men entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs, again, no data to back this, so I don't know. I don't think there is a significant difference if the entrepreneurial intent stems from a set of motivations, right? And those motivations are external to oneself. So if the motivation is, look, I keep saying this jokingly, right? I don't think it would have made a difference if Mother Teresa or Mahatma Gandhi or Swami Vivekananda, I don't think the gender mattered, right? Some elements of their work were maybe helped for them to do what they were doing a bit better, but I think it came from deep desire to make a difference. So gender doesn't matter, and if you find that you don't have all the abilities to go out and do what you intended to do, and if it's important enough, we will ask for help, right? Entrepreneurs will ask. They're always asking, reaching out and asking for help. I think men may be able to do it a little bit more. They're more emboldened to do this, perhaps, than women are. And so that is something that we might want to look at and address and validate even, right? To say that, are women just juggling so many things that, can I just do what I'm doing in the best possible manner? Or can I park some of this for, to get somebody else to help me do this better?
Okay, so coming to the last two questions, really. Tell us about the Women on Boards program that you are associated with the...
So, this initiative was birthed about 2 years ago, and it's been wonderful because it came out of a conversation with two people. And this, again, I go back to the universe conspiring, right? It's something that I've been quite interested in. The sector has a lot of women, but at the leadership level, like everywhere else, every other sector, that number peters down. And I was very keen to see whether we could address that in some way. And two independent conversations, one with Ravi Sridharan, who's the founder of ISDM, and the other with Neera, who is the co-founder of Dasra. Both are co-founders of their own organizations, independent conversations. And, both of them alluded to, can we get more people onto boards of nonprofit organizations? And so what we've come up with really is an opportunity for mid-career women to find, 8 to 10 hours a month to contribute as advisory board members onto nonprofit organizations. So it's a tripartite, I would say, between ISDM, Dasra, and myself. We've done 2 cohorts. The goal is to get 100 women on boards. It's a 3-month training. It's a 3-module training program. We've done 2 cohorts, so we are at the sweet spot of 51, I think. We're hoping to do 2 more before the close of this year. Majority of those women have been connected to organizations. What we're learning is that governance is governance. The nature of the organization really does not matter, right? So we're hoping that the skills that they pick up through this program will enable the women who are coming in to actually be far more equipped and perhaps even better board members if they choose to be board members in the corporate sector.
Yeah.
The compliance areas and the statutory areas will differ, of course, but the ability to lead and govern and participate as a board member, that is universal, and hopefully that's the experience that we are building.
So last word on women on boards in the corporate sector. Where is India at, and why do you think we are where we are, and what is the way forward?
So like I said, I think that of course there's a long way to go, right? And I think that the context is now a little bit more open. There is regulation, there is conversation, there is intent for women to get onto corporate boards also. But I think we need to equip ourselves, to get our voices heard all the time, to go out there and say, look, to whoever is there within our contact, it could be our colleagues, our bosses, our mentors, to say that I want to get onto a board of my company or a company. What do I need to do, right? And to believe that it's possible. More important, that it will take time. You will need to travel, And I think honestly, this is something I find, right, that women at this age of 40, 50, whatever, right, while you might think that, okay, empty nest is happening, this and that, there are other issues that women need to give attention to, right? Within the family, this is cultural. Also within the family, so there are parents that may need more attention. There's one's own, personal health transformation that happens. So we're entering menopause, and there's, stuff to deal with that. But all that set aside, I think it's very critical for women to say, I need to do this and I want to do this. We need a lot more women in positions of leadership in the corporate sector, in the nonprofit sector, wherever, right? We are not going to change as a society, as a community, as a country, as global citizens. I mean, I keep joking that look at all the trouble that the world is going through, and look at who's at the helm of those troubles, right? So we definitely need a lot more women to take that first courageous step. You can go wrong, you'll fall, you'll fail, and that's part of life. But just, stick our necks out a bit more.
On that note, thank you very much, Aarthi, for your
Thanks, Maithili.
insights and perspectives into this whole sector.
Thank you.
Over to you, Group Captain, for questions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Aarthi. It's very insightful, and we have over 650 viewers watching this online. Plus, we have already a couple of 100 in one Zoom. We got a number of questions. We got another 10-15 minutes to go. We'll try and squeeze in as much as possible. And the first question from Mr. Arul, Professor Arul. He says, Madam, volunteering, why is this concept is not very well appreciated in India? How do we motivate young individuals, young students to volunteer and contribute, because it teaches them a lot of good things in life which otherwise they will have no opportunity to learn?
It's a very difficult question for me to answer, because I don't know, why people are not volunteering in large numbers as they might. I think that there are probably 2 or 3 reasons for it. One, I think that there is not enough awareness of what is possible, right? I believe that if people knew and were more conscious of what is it that I can do, then I think the opportunities to volunteer become more visible. It's likely that people might. I think the second is, and I'm making this statement very carefully and consciously, is I think that we take our privilege for granted, right? The fact that we are sitting here, I'm sitting somewhere, you're sitting somewhere, we're speaking in a language that is not even our own. I think that we have already got a head start in life, right? We are very close to the finish line, and just that awareness needs to be very consciously built, and from a very young age, right? Gratitude is not a bad thing. It's a very, very good thing, but it's just a bunch of words. If you thank whoever every day, I mean, what are you going to do with all that has been given to you? Right. So I think the second thing is just being aware and building that awareness, I would say from a very young age, but it's never too late, is very critical. And third is, for the people who are volunteering, this is very cultural, right? Professor Arul, is that we have this thing of, the right hand shouldn't know what the left hand did kind of thing, right? We want to be quiet and secretive about what we are doing for others. I think that might have been relevant at a different time and context where more people were doing this, but it's very important for every one of us to go out there and say, look, I'm doing this and join me, right? And I'm doing this not because I'm great, but I'm doing this because it's making me feel better about myself, right? And so join me, right? I think if these three things were to happen, we'll definitely be able to escalate the pace and the numbers, therefore.
But I think this generation is definitely volunteering more than what my generation did, by leaps and bounds.
It's possible, Maithili. It would be interesting to definitely, study this in depth. I think that there is also a class element, Maithili. I think that while young people are certainly more aware, they come up in droves when there is a crisis, a campaign, and so on. And I truly appreciate all of that. I also think sometimes that as one goes up the class hierarchy, it tends to become a little bit lesser, right? So, I mean, I for example, won't find many people. I have never helped the policeman on the street patrol traffic. I haven't done it, right? I am bothered by the traffic. A very senior person in the police once said, madam, if you're complaining about the traffic, you are the traffic also, right? If I'm sitting at home, I'm not going to be complaining about the traffic.
True.
Yeah.
Right. It teaches, yes, compassion and sharing and caring, all that comes with the volunteering. Yes, right. So another question from Ms Aarthi, again from Chennai. He says, volunteering develop the teamwork, and do you advise that educational institutions to include it in the curriculum and improve their students' participation more, and so that the students learn if they're put as a part of a curriculum?
I think this is already happening. And, for example, I do know that it's either CBSE or ICSE or both, perhaps, that have included community service as part of their requirements. The NSS, the NCC, the Scouts, Guides, all of that already exists. And they've existed far before any of us have been talking about volunteering itself. I do believe, therefore, the short answer is it's happening to a small extent, but are enough people participating in these initiatives? Probably not. And we need to drive a little bit more interest in that. But starting young, we do a schools program through iVolunteer Chennai. It's a very large, well-known school in Chennai city with more than 10,000 children that are volunteering through very many different activities. It started out by, teachers saying, okay, this is a project, you have to do it, just like you would do a geography, history, or a science project. But it's been very interesting to see how kids, are loving what they're doing. And they're doing very, very simple things like once a week, I will clean my own classroom and not have the helper do it, right? It builds awareness of how difficult that job actually is to clean, multiple classroom blackboards, put chairs in order. It's not easy for some, and kids as young as first and second grade. So I think this is beginning to happen, but yes, I mean, there is a lot more that needs to be done. And each one of us needs to try and see what we can do to make that happen.
If I may add, after this, it became a regulation that government companies must set aside a certain amount of funding for CSR. Definitely, more funds have started coming. So both for colleges and corporate volunteers, maybe some systemic regulation. I mean, it starts as a compulsion and then it becomes a habit.
Yeah, so so there is, like I said, it's highly encouraged. These opportunities exist within schools and colleges. I had mentioned the NSS, for example, it's a wonderful scheme, actually. But can it be more effective? Can it be more efficient? Can more children, participate? And that aside, I think a lot of colleges have other special interest groups, right? So you'll have the environment club, you'll have, safety club, you'll have the first aid club, blood donors club. All of those things exist. So I'm very hopeful because these opportunities exist. But like I said, we need to drive greater intent and appetite for young people to participate. We can't be happy saying that, there are more younger people now than before that are doing this. And that's obviously a good thing we must springboard from. But I'm also saying that not enough. are doing it in terms of what is possible.
To me, here is a question from Lakshmi. Lakshmi is from Tanjavur. Many women have take a break after the family birth of a child and try to get back to the work after a few years, but totally get disappointed. They do not get the same opportunity or same enthusiasm, and they lose the interest in the work. What's your advice to these women, and also in terms of people who would like to take leave after the break of the family? Do you think they should take the break at all, or carry on with the work and take that as per the rule? What is the break applicable? What's your view on this?
So this is this I think is better answered through company HR policies. I know that they're evolving and they're changing. There is a lot of flexibility now for women who are taking break from work and coming back. I believe that the corporate sector is also providing, reskilling. I know there are organizations that are focused on women getting back to work and so on. It wouldn't be fair for me to comment on that, but I do want to make a comment about, should women take a break or not take a break? And that is, I think, entirely up to the individual. Right? I do know that if you take a break, please be aware of what are the likely consequences of that break, right? And take it very consciously and have those discussions with those around, whether it's your employer, your family, your parents, or whoever, to say, like, I want to take a break. And this is like, it's likely that, I will not be able to take a break, or I don't want to take a break beyond 20 days or a month or 2 months. And what is the support system that you are creating for yourself before you decide to take a break from work? I would encourage women to have that conversation equally with their employers. The truth is that in some areas, for example, right, especially the technical areas, I'm given to understand that if there is a gap, then it's a gap, because things have evolved and moved. And I believe that this is probably true in maybe IT, software, and perhaps a few other areas as well. But I equally believe that there are ways to reskill, right? And jump back and be realistic. I mean, if you left 5 years ago, it's unlikely that you'll be able to join back at a level that you might have reached if you had not taken a break. So I think just being realistic and looking for opportunities to reskill, but having those conversations with everybody around before making the decision is very critical.
Very true, madam. As you mentioned, develop a good support system before you take a call. Very, very important.
Correct.
Madam, this is a question from Arun Kumar from Pondicherry. He says, Madam, over 3 million NGOs are registered in India and over 11,000 are there in Tamil Nadu. A few only act as a facilitator, catalyst, or partner in bringing social transformation. How do you strengthen this sector because for their active participation to achieve their objective? Because they play very, very critical role in the development of social sector. What's your view and what's your advice and what should be the way forward? Not to the government, everybody.
It's a very good question. Thank you so much. So I'm not very sure of this 3 million number. It's been floating around for a while now. In the sense that I don't know what all that includes, right? It could include both organizations that are not, that are defunct, but just have a registration, as well as those that are active. The truth is we have a lot of nonprofit organizations, right? And that to me speaks of two things. One, that there is obviously entrepreneurial intent. So somebody will start, saying that, okay, I want to work with the community around me and I will start and do this through an organization. That they're effective or not effective, again, is a generalization that I would, in a very cautioned manner make. I believe there's scope for everybody to improve. It doesn't apply only to nonprofits. It doesn't matter. Everybody wants to do better. It doesn't, you could be an IT company, you could be making soaps or shampoo, but everybody's in the business of wanting to do better. And that's why you get up and go to work every day. But I think that the opportunity to enable some of these organizations to be more impactful, there are two things that I would look at. One is, that the organization wanted themselves or not. Okay, you can't be this forced parent to an organization and say, okay, you need to be more effective. I think you have to do better. I'm going to come and help. I'm going to come and give you that advice. So one is, does the organization perceive that as a problem or not? If they don't, then I would say keep away. There's little that you can do about it. If the organization is open to receiving support. And if you're in a position to either facilitate it or give it, then please do. So either by working with them, by figuring out who else can work with them, help them, but in a manner and a pace that they are comfortable with. Right?
Great.
That's important. Yeah.
Mr. Philip, again from Chennai, he says, fundamental questions. What's the difference between a not-for-profit and an NGO? If the not-for-profit means they cannot earn profit at all, or how do they survive? Fundamental question.
Yeah. So it's an NGO, non-profit. I mean, these are all used quite synonymously. They both mean the same thing. How do non-profits survive? They survive through the grants and donations that individuals and institutions make to them for the work that they are doing. There is usually an agreed percentage that goes into enabling the people who are working in these non-profits to also make a living. It's, in my view, it's usually very, very modest for the large majority of organizations. But that's how they survive. And, these are both used synonymously. They are usually organizations that are registered either as a trust, a society, or a Section 8 company.
True, madam. I think one more thing, fundamental difference is a not-for-profit organization means the profit doesn't get distributed to the stakeholders.
Correct.
So that's a fundamental thing, so that you can earn any amount of profit, but
Correct.
you must be able to spend what you earn, at least 85%
towards the objects of the organization. Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Here is another question from, again, Mr. Ramanathan from Chennai. He says, in your view, are NGOs successful in India? Why most of the not-profit NGOs in India fail, or get into controversies more than fail?
Yeah, so I think these are, these are dangerous kind of assumptions to make, in my view, because, and I certainly do not know whether I would be comfortable saying most NGOs are failing or that most NGOs are successful, right? We don't know. There are some that are doing tremendous work, undoubtedly, right? And there are some that don't. And I think that's the truth with any kind of sector. There are some companies that do very well. There are some companies that don't do very well. The reasons for success or failure are many, and I think we will need a separate session on that. But it would be safe to say that where there is clarity of mission, the right kind of people willing to be involved and backing that mission or that cause with time, resources, and money, and there is enough learning within the organization to keep evolving based on what the community needs, those organizations have been successful.
It's a question from Mr. Joseph, is from Madurai. He says, madam, is it difficult to start a not-for-profit organization? What one single thing important to set up a not-for-profit organization, and which is the area you think is most convenient for an NGO to work?
So I would say start with what you want to do and why you want to do this, right? I mean, every area is equally important, whether it's health or education or gender or nutrition, elderly care, disability, doesn't matter. There is a need everywhere. What is it that you will be excited doing, right? I mean, I would say that please, one should not start yet another NGO because, I just want to start something, right? I think figuring out what you want to do and how long you want to commit to it, what is it that you're willing to commit to? Very, very important before you decide whether you want to start an NGO or not. My broad advice is there are enough NGOs. If you really want to bring about change, please go join one of them, either as a volunteer or as a paid, staff. And there are enough opportunities. I don't think we have the need to start yet another organization, irrespective of which part of the country we're from.
Good, I think another 3-4 minutes, I'll try and squeeze in as many questions as possible. Here's a question from Mr. Arubagam from Chennai again. Madam, corruption is the area of NGO. This is what you want to say. And when government exempts from tax and other facilities, a corrupt NGO is a burden on the nation. How do you eradicate them? And is there any NGOs who check the corruption in another NGO? I know NGOs check corruption in government organization, but NGO to NGO, is there any organization? Do you think is a need of the hour?
I think the government has regulations that require to be followed. And I would hesitate to talk about NGOs being corrupt, all the corporate sector being corrupt. I think people are corrupt or not corrupt. It's as simple as that. It's individuals who are honest or dishonest. So you could have very honest people in a seemingly very corrupt corporate or an NGO, or you could have, very dishonest people in an organization that is, regulation friendly and compliant. So I think it's important there are enough laws to regulate both nonprofits and corporates. It's important that those laws are followed. And it's important that the individuals who are in those organizations as individuals are ethical, upright, moral, and honest people. I do not think that there are, I don't know, there could be, but I don't think there is another NGO that is sort of, looking at the corruption or lack of it in the nonprofit sector. I'm not aware.
Here's a question from Mr. Sridhar from Hyderabad. He says, how do you raise money for NGOs? What are the various avenues available to raise money? Is there any organization which helps NGOs to professionalize and raise their money?
That is another evening.
Another evening with far better qualified people than me to address that. It is difficult to raise money. I would say that it's not the easiest thing, but it's difficult to raise money anywhere. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be a nonprofit to find the difficulty to raise money. I think companies equally find it difficult to raise money for some work that they're doing. But like Maiti said, it's a whole different session on what will work. What type
session?
of
There are courses nowadays on.
Correct. That is true. That is course.
Quite a number of them.
Yes.
One last question before we let you go, madam. And nowadays, one issue many young women face is the well-being of their parents and in-laws who are getting old and they're not able to stay with them. What's your one word of advice to these young people, how they should put a safety net around them to make sure that parents are well taken care of? And otherwise, a lot of issues are happening in the society, which is seriously impact the morale of the young people. They're not able to really ignore nor be with them.
My God, that's a very difficult. I would say it's personal choices that one makes, right? I mean, how you want your parents or your elderly in the family to be taken care of is a conversation that you need to have with them, and negotiate expectations if there are, based on where you are in your life and career and situation, to what is expected from you. I do not think that the responsibility should entirely be on the woman. I do believe that is changing. I also believe that it's changing. I think the responsibility needs to be shared between partners, between siblings, and others in the family. And I would say that it's very hard. There is no recipe for this, to be honest. It depends on the people in that equation, honestly.
Thank you so much. The number of questions, we have totally run out of time, and thank you so for responding to all the questions so patiently.
Thank you.
Now, before we request Maitri to give the closing remarks, since you are
thank you
separate
very
by the
much,
distance.
Aarthi. This has been a very different topic for us. Group Captain will agree. It's a very different area of interest, and I think it's relevant for everybody in the audience, men and women, whether you're students and you want to start volunteering by yourself or through your college, whether you're looking for careers, looking for mid-career shifts, or whether you have some other career, but there are weekend and time opportunities, can volunteer in any little way you want. For women who are taking a break, I find a lot of housewives are now giving some time to some cause or something. So whether you've taken a break or whether if you've been a housewife and you want to continue to be one, is there 2 hours a week that we can take out, and do something for someone? So I think this is now a mainstream idea. To me, social sector, involving yourself in the social sector is going mainstream, and it is for everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you everybody. And you'll find me on LinkedIn and social media, so feel free to ping me there. Thank you.
Okay, madam, as a token of our appreciation, as you mentioned, you are in Calcutta. So what we do at MMA on your behalf, we present so many things. We do a lot of work at the CSR, work with the school children. So we present them on behalf of textbook to the poor, needy children. We also give them the meal. There are some of the schools, there is no midday meal schemes. We give them money on your behalf as a token of your appreciation, so that the poor children are well fed. And thank you. Really appreciate you are accepting and coming and talking to us, and people like you come and talk, really inspire us to do this all the work what we do. There are school children, as you rightly mentioned, the school children are so good. In fact, some of the school where they work, children do all the work in the school, including shifting the school benches, cleaning the toilets. It's really very heartening to know some of the points what you said is really happening in some of the city schools actually.
Correct.
Thank you so much. Aarthi. Maybe when you come next time, we'll take your help and guidance in some of the events what we do in many schools. It'll be a pleasure to really interact with you and work with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, large number of viewers who have watched this program. Thank you so much. Please look forward to seeing you at our convention again. It's happening on 25th. You're not able to think registration is closed. Doesn't matter. It's live on air and you can watch it free from your own comfort. Thank you. Thank you once again for all your support. Thank you, Maithili, for ably, as usual, bringing one of the outstanding speakers and moderating so beautifully. Thanks so much. And thanks everyone. I'm quite sure you would have become more wiser and richer. Start volunteering. And if you know what to do, come to MMA. We have a lot of volunteers. MMA surveys only with volunteers, and we are one of the successful NGOs. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Till we meet again. Good night.